He's a film director, a producer, a Guinness World Record holder, was a professor of college English and communications, and a best-selling author of several books, to include his latest book, Ingénée, the most powerful woman who ever lived. Verbally passed down among the most elite European scholars, but never recorded in the written word, Carl David Blake brings the French medieval story of Ingénée to the world. And the book not only brings an in-depth look at France during the Dark Ages and the emergence of a very powerful woman, but connects this event to current world events with the story of 4 young legal eagles who get together for a quote-unquote innocent time of partying and getting away. And oops, how'd we do that? They cast a hellacious demonic spell and conjure up some things that, well, you should just get the book. It is riveting. Carl, thank you for coming to my show today.
Thank you, Loretta.
Goodness. So this, I've interviewed you before, and I think we talked about quantum activation or something.
Right.
Something very different. And I changed the channel with this book and was riveted. Would you please give us some background as to what led to the writing of this book? Yeah.
This was very weird. I tell people now that this happened, before COVID. Now BC is no longer before Christ; it's before COVID.
Yes, it is. By the way,
it's a new time period. Really.
Wait, Carl, it could also be before Carl and after Carl, but
for sure.
Teasing you. I'm just teasing you.
What happened was I had this horror film called Unprotected. I was ready to direct it. I was ready to get funding and everything. And it was so evil that my editors had problems reading it. That's how, where the one that's the beginning of this Ingénée book. And I was trying to drive, for some reason, you're trying to get this thing done. It couldn't get done. I'm just grinding. And then COVID hit, and a really famous director told me, write the book. So a screenplay is about 1/2 to 1/3 of a book. A book, the novel's about 2 to 3 times as long. So I'm like, what do I do? So I had the Ingénée book started, and I'm like, I'm going to connect these because this is so relevant, because there's these 4 powerful attorneys, doing what they're doing, running off the moral path there. And
quite a bit.
And that spell is a real spell. I warn people, do not.
Yes, it is.
Do not do this. I consulted with several people. That's not just some gimmick. I said, I don't want any spiritual entanglements. So the story of Ingénée, this sounds almost embarrassing for me, is I wasn't into religion, organized religion very much. And this girl was, a Christian. There were no Christians before the Reformation. They were all Catholic. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. But it just connected. When the professor of literature, I was in Florida, and I asked him at an event, I was an undergraduate in biology, not literature. So when I asked him who his favorite character of all time was, out of everything, religion, philosophy, arts, history, who's his favorite character? And he goes, Ingénée. I'm like, who's Ingénée? And then he proceeded to tell me, and he added Old English to it, and the resonance of Old English was magical. He added Old French, and I was just stunned by this young girl who was 4 years old, who was a traveling scholar. By the time she was 9, she spoke 12 languages. She was going around the royalty. And I was telling people that she actually existed, and her name was eradicated. There were several reasons for it. But I was trying to tell people, no, her name really did exist. And so we did a Google search, couldn't find it. And a friend did ancestry.com, and she actually found the name. And it's nowhere, anywhere in Google. It sounds like Ingénée, sounds like a nice French name, but it was eradicated throughout history. So I decided to connect it. And once I connected, I started having these odd dreams and these premonitions. And there was one, I actually got to talk to her. And what she told me just absolutely blew my mind. I'm like, there is no way. And when I was having these dreams, I was going, you realize I'm going to Google this stuff as soon as I wake up. It's because I want to see if this is any weird just dream in my head as compared to that. And the first thing was, I said, okay, the boat Ingénée traveled on, which it was about the 12th century. I said, I do know Columbus's boats were like 50 to 70 feet. So there's no way you had a boat 365 feet. I said, no, it was 365. I said, it was not. I'm Googling. I had an argument in my dream. And then I Googled it. The largest boat at that time was 379 feet.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't even know they had boats.
No, I didn't know that either.
So I'm like, okay, you got my attention now. And then the other question I asked was, tea in England came around, the big tea trade came around in like the 1700s. But they were drinking tea way back then. And I'm saying, wait a second, I Googled this, and I already know this, and this is in my dream. You did not have that many tea. And then the voice came, he goes, do you think the trade routes from Ethiopia all the way to Scandinavia, you don't think the English and the French ever even tried the tea and the spices that were going back and forth? And I'm like, okay, you won.
Yeah.
So that was the genesis of me continuing the book. And then when I was, having these dreams on it, I started writing and I started seeing this girl. And it was stunning on what she did. Her character, her class, everything she did was right. And I was like, people should know about her because we have all of these movies where I'm going to bash Hollywood for a second.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
okay. Fine. You have like these movies, critique Hollywood. You have these movies like, Crunchy Man, Smacky Man, Bitey Man. I'm not going to name the names.
Yeah.
And it's Crunchy Man beats up bad guys, sleeps with Crunchy Woman. She gets kidnapped. He frees her at the end, right? Isn't that 85% of everything coming out? And they said, we need to empower women. So you have Crunchy Woman, beats up bad guy, sleeps with Crunchy Man. They both get kidnapped, and then they get freed. I'm like, suppose you have intelligence above a lint ball. How are you supposed to enjoy these movies?
Sorry, but I so want a shirt that says Crunchy Woman. Anyway, no, you're so right. Please keep on. I love it.
Yeah. And it's ridiculous because I was actually talking to my doctor yesterday, an Indian guy, and he was like, I can't watch movies anymore. I want something uplifting. I want something that I can go, that's fun and happy, and I can't even turn on the TV anymore. And I get it. Yeah. So here, I always hated the horror films where the evil's still lurking. And I'm like, when are they ever going to show the good? When are we ever going to show the power of the good? Yeah. So then I already had the screenplay. Like I said, you could check it. I already copyrighted it, unprotected. So it was this evil, non-existent. And then they call the spirit of Ingénée for help. And you see it in the book. And you're like, whoa. It sent chills down my own spine to connect these two. Yeah. And then because she's such a cute kid, and then she becomes so powerful. And I was chatting with a very prominent producer, a big. And I told her, I said, I don't think Hollywood is ready for Ingénée. I don't think she's ready for Ingénée. So I'm I was just looking at, trying to convince her to take a look at the book. And she says, oh, I definitely want to read the book. So she says it's on her list. But one of the things that I try to tell people is this woman was real. She did exist. She was that smart as a kid, as a traveling scholar. So this is something that I really took pride in doing. And one of the things was I felt like, oh, I don't want to do this like category of this pro-Christian category. I'm not against it. Totally, I'm open to that, believe in that. But I didn't want to be that C.S. Lewis type of writer. And bam, that just happened from last book. So I had to study. I was born more atheistic, and nobody in the family had any religious or spiritual background. And I had to study Catholicism actually to write this book. And I was like, what? And one of the odd things
I love that, Carl. I just love your story. Keep going. Yeah.
One of the odd things is I had to learn about this, and I could not believe how many Catholic churches were continually burned down. I was researching this, and even in the area that in Calais, I was looking in the area, and as I go back in time, all the things the professor was talking about was true, but they were all of these, this church burned down, this church, and they rebuilt it, burned it down, rebuilt it. I'm like, what was the national pastime of Europe to burn down Catholic churches? I just never seen anything like it. So I got more intrigued, I got more intrigued about the whole thing. So then I continued to do study, and I sent it to, a friend of mine who's very much a Catholic. She goes, this is right on line with everything I can't believe how much you're learning, because everything that professor told you, everything from your dreams are right on the money. And I'm like, wow. So I was just really taken back by doing this. So there were times that I was even trying writing the book because she was something that we are missing in our society.
Yes.
Her whole thing was put God first, put God first, put God first. You got to have a moral code when you go through life. And so I'm listening to this girl, and this is what the professor told me. And I put it aside because I didn't want to write it. And here I am attaching it to a horror film. And now you have respect for the good side. You do. You're like, I tell people, yeah, don't mess with the bad side, but don't mess with that good side either.
Yeah.
You don't want to be on the other end of that. Knowledge is the empowerment. Mm-hmm. It's always been. Yeah. It's always been. Wisdom has always been sought after. And today we've dummied down so many things from the school system. I can't even believe the world we live in right now. I feel like I woke up in a novel myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we're seeing these things, I'm like, where is that thirst for knowledge? And when she did that, she gained so much favor by her love of knowledge. So I think she would be a perfect, like I was telling my friend who was an editor on it, Jean, I said, if I were a lost girl, like 12, 13 years old, and I didn't know which way to turn, I'd pick up this book and follow Ingénée. I really would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I would just do that, because you're focused on good, you're focused on God, you're focused on study, learn, not just to pass a test, learn. And then you impress people with your knowledge. And that's really was the genesis of this. So when I connected the horror film with this, and it just naturally, it just flowed. I kept telling my friend Jean, Ingénée, this is not even my book anymore. I'm just having dreams of just writing this stuff down, in between all the stuff the professor taught me. And I'm checking it and Googling it because I didn't even trust my own dreams. I've been told the person my dreams. I'm Googling this. I hope you know, because I don't believe you. And that was the skeptic in me. And then I just started, it just flowed perfectly. And this time, I decided I bought the Mac and the software for the book design, and I just did the whole thing myself. I didn't want anybody else messing with it.
Right. I just I just say yes to what he said, right? This book is powerful. So as a, Reiki master, by the way, I love the fact you got a Reiki master in the book. Thank you. And what I'm going to call real healers, the real deal. We'll talk more about that after the break for those people listening. But I could feel the power in this book, and Ingénée came to me. So I'm real clear that you have tapped into something with this book, and I want to say this to the listening audience. So the story of Ingénée is true. It's true, and I love you sharing how you researched that and how you brought that forward. But I think she wanted her story to come forward, and then you very adeptly wove it into it's truth in a fiction book, right? Because you have brought a storyline in so we can follow how it works out in now time, which I think is imperative, by the way. I think that's the point, right? So when we talk about the medieval or the dark ages of France, and then you connect it with the now ages, because I'm always asking people, are we enlightened or are we in the dark ages? What are we doing
Second
here?
dark ages.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you too. Like I was thinking when you were talking about all these child proteges, like we have all these amazing children like that are artists. They come out and they're artists, or they're uber smart kids, that are like at 6 years old working with nuclear energy or something. And we have a tendency, and I like how you brought this out in the book, to where Ingénée's father would just say, just go along with people. They're going to think you're like a little puppy. And they're like, oh, she's so adorable. She's so cute. We're going to pick her up. She's only 4 years old. And then she speaks like, 6 languages or whatever the heck it is she's doing at that age. And they're like, oh, but they still treat her like a little puppy. And so she's always saying, well, you got to act like a little puppy. Right. And I was thinking to myself, do we do that to children nowadays? And perhaps we do. You and I are of an age that, I was raised to respect my elders and, sit up straight at the table and, greet people and don't slouch around, right? And please, I'm not just bashing on all the youth, because I think there's a lot of great youth out there. But I do know that a lot of people have lost their way. And perhaps it is too much screen time, or it's a lack of, as you said, where is the passion for learning? Where is the desire to be greater than you are, or to evolve yourself? I'm a lifelong learner. Like my joke is that if I could stay up late at night and read dusty leather-bound books that are in some weird language with a flashlight and a magnifying glass, I'm so happy. Like, oh, great, here we go. Right? But there's something in this book that I think calls us to really take a look at what it is that we are doing. And just a teaser, and then we're going to take a little station break. And you also bring out very clearly the dangers of false friends, or being too trusting, or giving away your power, right? Which is a big part of the book at some level. So my guest today, Carl David Blake, I hope you're enjoying this interview as much as I am. Just get the book Ingénée, and please do not, I mean this, do not cast the main spell in this book. It's the real deal, and it's a very fascinating read. It's well written. But for me, it's right up my alley. I was just riveted, and I don't know, it's what I do every day, right? It's just the regular day. So this is Loretta Brown, and with Carl David Blake, his book Ingénée, the most powerful woman who ever lived. Welcome back to the original Loretta Brown Show, and with my guest, Carl David Blake. I am Loretta Brown. You can find out more about me at ReikiOasis.com. These shows are archived. You can download them and listen to them over and over at the KKNW 1150 AM archives. for the original Loretta Brown Show. And of course, we're on iTunes, Podcast One, Megaphone, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud. I don't know. Just Google it. You'll find it. And you are going to want to get this book, Ingénée, the most powerful woman that ever lived, which is, she really lived. Yeah, she really lived. We were talking during the break about how she's influenced us. I was sharing with Carl that reading this book has influenced me, and I think it's very timely. So the world out there has got all kinds of things going on. I do see people have kind of lost their way a little bit, like not quite sure what to do. And without getting too preachy with everybody, I think sometimes people are just seeking pleasure. Like a lot of people come to me and they go, I just want to feel good all the time. And I don't want anything that makes me not feel good, right? And I'm like, but we're growing. So sometimes there's going to be some growth pains, perhaps, or some things. So, Carl, during the break, you were talking a little bit about Ingénée and that she's kind of an inspiration. And I know people haven't read the book, right? Because it's just out there. But what are some of the qualities that she embodies?
I liked what you said, that she doesn't negotiate with evil. I was going to ask you to what we talked about on the break to expand on that, because I didn't even think about that. She doesn't negotiate with evil.
So in the work that I do, which is indefinable, right? I do a lot of things to help people release old things and break out or get rid of old habits or whatever. But one of the things that I'm very aware of is that not everything that's affecting people is coming from them. So if you could say it's an evil or it's a negative thought forms, it's something outside of them. There are generational, quote unquote, curses. There are things that come down through our lineages. And I have always been that person that there's something that will, call it God, call it whatever, that, and for people listening, those that are true workers will know what I'm talking about. There comes a point where you just do not negotiate with it. You do not communicate with it. You don't have a conversation. You don't need to know what it needs. It's out of there, right? And so I recognize that in Ingénée, that there's this point, and in your story, I'll bring Ingénée in. You've got a scene where she has a godson, Gabriel, who is, I don't know if he's 3, 2, he's little tiny guy. And Ingénée is 11. And she's very adept at sword play, and she's been taught all of that as well as all of the academics. And this woman shows up with this very fierce, mean dog that is going to kill this child. Like, it's really clear the dog's going to go for it. And Ingénée just steps in there and takes care of it. That's what I'm going to say. She just takes care of it. And so that's where my comment came from, was that she is not negotiating with evil. She's like, no, that's it. So where in ourselves do we find this fierceness? This rightness, this, stand your groundness. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where I was coming from with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, that non-negotiating with evil or negativity or what's wrong, how you want to look at it, I'm seeing that less and less in society today. People, don't have that strong moral compass, and that affects everything and everybody. One of the, a friend of mine was in the military for over 30 years. And I said, why did you stay, when you could have gotten out at 25? He says, the worst battle is emotionally when you can't trust people around you. When I was in the military, I knew everybody. I would rather go to war with men who are willing to die for me than go to an office and get backstabbed all day long. And I'm telling you, I related to it. Yeah. I related to it. So,
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I get that, and that's how it affects everybody around you when you're like that, and we're seeing that more so, more so. A friend of mine said he's in his 20s, and I said, "What's the difference between you and your parents' generation?" He goes, "We don't have a definition of hero. We can't relate to anything that doesn't benefit us." And I was like, whoa. I don't even know what to say about that. Loretta, what do you think?
Well, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it kind of alludes back to something I said before the break, that in this book, you do talk about the dangers of false friends who can lead you really astray. And there was a comment that was in the book, and you repeated it a couple of times throughout the story. And that's the point that I'll just use the word demons, right? I'll just use that word. Use jealousy and to really get in there. Like that's one of the biggest things they use. And then that leads to betrayal. And like you say, you can't trust that people really have your back. Do they really have your back? Are they competing? You know, we're in a very competitive world. And so, like you say, yeah, I'd rather go to battle with those guys than go to work and be backstabbed all day, right? So it does bring into, like I said, it's a big conversation, but the moral compass, do we have that moral compass? In the book, as you're reading through the story, you really, really get the idea of what is required to show up in that manner and to really have each other's backs and to come together as a community that is dedicated toward these higher ideals, right? And I kind of think people thirst for it. My experience is that people are seeking either connection or God or some sort of a higher way of being, that at some point they get bored with their life, you know? And so, yeah, I don't know. It's a lot.
There's also something to be said about wisdom, you know, and even in the Bible, you know, with Solomon, and even Ingénée mentions it in there, that the thirst for wisdom I don't see on people today like I did when I was in college. I used to love college. I used to love the idea of sitting in a classroom with one of the, you know, a great scientist, world famous, and listening to them lecture. You know, when Jordan Peterson is going around the world, you know, and I definitely like the guy, but when I was in college, there was a Jordan Peterson in every college in the country. There was 100 of them at every single college. He wasn't anything special, but we've dumbed down our society so much that there's one man going around talking about these things. And I was trying to tell people there were 5 million Jordan Petersons. Yes, they're important. Yes, they're wonderful. But what happened to them? You know, how do we get rid of all of them in school? So there's like this anti-learning. We're definitely in the second dark ages. And when you're starting to see that, you know, Ingénée being a traveling scholar, and then you have Jordan Peterson traveling, and then you have people paying to see him outrageous money when there should be those at every single community college, every single college. So that's something that I kind of scratch away because I love learning. I've learned learning new things. I joined another French club so I could start learning French because I never learned it fluently. Yeah, I love learning new things and doing new things and interacting with, you know, one of my favorite things is have breakfast with my friends and just chat for hours, you know.
Yeah.
I was downtown. Yeah. I was at there, you know, 4 hours chatting with a friend. You don't see that. Everybody's on their phone. Everybody is distracted, you know, from the person that's right in front of them. And I don't think that people see each other as valuable. And it hit me. The other day it hit me. I was with a friend. I'm like, do you think that a lot of these people are on their phone also because they have nothing to say? You know, I'm starting to believe that a lot of these people they don't study. They're not excited about learning new things. They'll go overseas just to, they go to Italy to snap some good pictures, but what do you call those people in Italy? Oh, Italians, right? You may want to interact with the Italians instead of just having pictures of yourself.
A while back, Ahmed Goswami, I had him on the show, and he said the average attention span is 1.5 seconds. So how can you possibly give a lecture to people who can only listen for 1.5 seconds? And I think that, we need to redevelop that ability. In your book, Ingénée, I feel like she's the protector of scholars or education or something like this, importance for intellectuals to be protected and for our right to have that conversation. Or the other thing I was thinking is, in the book, many of the things that she was able to overcome, even at such a, quote, young age, was through her learning. So she learned all these languages, like it's crazy. So she could speak fluently in all these languages. She wrote a diary that went from language to language and used nuance and symbols, the language of symbols. Like, that's a powerful language that takes scholarly adeptness. Even her fighting skills, she was able to overcome some of these attacks from whoever because of her learning. And I think that is just something that it can't be emphasized enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's her thirst for knowledge was unbelievable. But, and she always knew that her time was limited on the planet. But the protector of the intellect, I just had this conversation before with somebody, and we don't honor teachers. They're the most important profession because every profession depends on it. Like when you're teaching Reiki to maybe, beginning Reiki masters, it's the teacher. It starts all with the teacher. It always started with the teacher. And once we didn't honor that, we got lost. One of my favorite movies was The Dead Poets Society. Okay. A long time ago. That's a long time ago. That's a quarter century ago. But when you looked at what they were learning, they were learning, everybody learned Latin. It was like 62. Everybody learned Latin in those days. When I was talking to a friend of mine who's a retired doctor, his generation before mine, he was born in like the 40s, early 40s. And he was saying that all Americans spoke, obviously, English with competency exams, Latin 4 years with competency exams, Greek 3 years with competency exams, and a language you chose. So the average high school student who graduated in any reasonable area was able to speak 4 languages.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. We took the easy route. We said rights, and we got rid of responsibility. But so I think people are thirsting for those intelligent conversations, and they really want them, because when I talk, I see people all around me listening to my conversation. I was having a really intense conversation when I was in Los Angeles down in Redondo Beach, and this one woman walked over to me and my 2 buddies and said, "Oh, I have to apologize, but I was listening to your entire conversation. Yours was more interesting than ours." And I found that very interesting. But when I was in Los Angeles, people would tape my conversations with their phones like this. And I was like, come on, guys, they're making, have your own conversation, because I think they would just look for ideas. But to be around that academy, like in Greece, where it started with the original university started, these were great men and women getting around in a circle and exchanging ideas. That's how you learn. Andre was a traveling scholar. That's how you learned in those days.
Yeah.
You think like, just think about something where you would go 20 miles. That was a long way by horseback. You know, that was a long way. So you learned, like if somebody was like in the Portland area and it was the 1700s, they would come over to your house and they would tell you what Portland was like, right? Because maybe you weren't there, you know, you didn't want to take the ride. That's how we learned through the traveling scholars. That's why they were so important. The elite loved them. You know, you saw the movie Amadeus when he was also a traveling scholar. He had students, but you know, they would teach each other's kingdoms, and that's why the elite held the knowledge mostly because they exchanged their scholars because they're the only ones who could afford it. When the Renaissance hit, that's when the middle class moved up, and that's. Do you realize? I'm going to tell you a statistic that's going to be mind-boggling. Do you like dogs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
The average vocabulary during the Renaissance, that's the rebirth of knowledge, was 250 words. The average vocabulary of the Border Collie is over 750 words.
I love that. Yep.
Yes. And the Border Collies, there was one when Neil deGrasse Tyson was interviewing a Border Collie who had over 1,000-word vocabulary. It was stunning. But I would just want you to think how crazy that is. This is a species of another species. And today, these top 10 dogs have a larger vocabulary than the rebirth. That means that before the Renaissance, Fluffy clearly had a better grasp of any language than 80% of all the people that ever lived before 1700.
That's great.
So this is something very new for us. And I don't know if we could handle the intelligence that we're seeing. You know, the libraries are full of books, right? And no, I've never seen anybody get grabbed out of a library and thrown into a club. You know? I think it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
But so that thirst, and this is what Ingénée brought up, this is the power that she's bringing up, plus the symbolism that she used. She could look at she could tell you anything, what's going on in any room based on the artwork, based on the people's body language. She was on another 8 levels, you know?
Yeah.
So to have her at that time, when most of the people did not have the vocabulary of the Border Collie or the top 10 dogs, it was even more stunning on what she did. So you see this. One of the issues that we had as a species going back is that we were basically, most of the people were illiterate. It wasn't that long that we essentially defeated illiteracy. So, and we only did that because of the teacher. So that's really what, you know, when I read, you know, sometimes I'll take a look at the book and there's certain scenes in there that, you know, when the professor was telling me, and I'm writing the sequel because I know who her grandmother was and the whole thing that's going there.
Can't wait.
And what happened with, how did she end up there? Because she was more Middle Eastern, more like she came from an Islamic princess. So one of her lineage. So it was really very, very interesting on how they made it through Greece, how they integrated throughout Europe this delightful little girl. And I wish the world would take a look at her and read this and see what is her message.
Yeah.
And right now, when I'm looking at, like I said, I found it odd that I'm studying Catholicism. And when I was reading this article that said the number 1 rising book in the world is Revelation. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I was like, here I'm reading it for Ingénée's book. And, you know, several other people that helped me with it were like, wow, I'm taking a look at some of these things because it's all symbolism. But when you look at the symbolism and reading people's body language, that's just critical everywhere you go. So I don't know. I was going to ask you, where does she fit in to like the greats, on the spiritual side? Because she was obviously on another level. And there were probably other people around the world that could have been like her. I can't imagine anybody could touch her as far as intelligence, knowledge at that young age to be able to do that. I don't know if anybody could touch that. So is there any other people in history that you would relate her to, or is she just in the class by herself?
I think she is in a class by herself, but I also know, like I said, what's coming to me, and I was thinking about this earlier, is that we always have a group of, I'm going to say, proteges coming. So if you look at like Mozart, like a musical protege, right? And you look at what she brought, but I also think she's unique. Maybe we don't have the communication or the ability, like maybe many of their names were wiped out from history, sort of like hers, which, by the way, without giving away the ending, you give great insight into the fact that we actually do know about her, but with a different name and watered down version. So I kind of think that that's what's been going on. So somebody that powerful, someone that knowledgeable, and someone that stood up to everything that was going on and sort of defied it, did her own thing. I think they would want to erase that because it's too empowering to the people, right? It's too empowering. So I think she is back again because we need her. And I would rather suspect that as you begin to uncover things about her, that we'll have a clearer picture of who she really was, as they say, who she really was. For the listeners, I want to let you know that this book is also got love story in it. It brings forward it to me what happens when a blessed woman brings and activates her loving and healing abilities, because there's a contrast between her and her mother, who's very greedy and is a witch and is working with dark energies to try to get money and fame and power, which is a thing. And then you also bring in this idea about love and loyalty, and that without love and loyalty, no religion or spiritual enlightenment really has any meaning. So it's that world of love. So that I could probably talk to you a long time. Maybe we should do it off air, but I have my own ideas about Ingénée, and I'm just like thrilled you brought the book out there. And Carl David Blake, what's the last thing you want to say to the audience? I know, and I can't wait for your other book. Please let me know when it's ready. I'm ready. And
I would say that.
And the third one, I want that one too. Okay.
Yeah. I would say, Ingénée, if I were a young girl confused in the world, I would pray to God, and I would run towards Ingénée as fast as I could in this world. I really would. I just never seen one of the things in there. I don't think anybody loved more than she did. It wasn't just her fighting skills. It was her love. That's what made her so powerful too. Her wisdom, her love, and then you didn't want to mess with her.
Yeah.
So everything.
Yeah. I don't, like I said, I don't want to be too preachy, but there's a verse in the Bible, no greater love than one that gives their life for another. Yeah. So Carl David Blake, and what's your website? Carl David Blake Publications or something?
Carl David Blake Productions. .com. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Ingénée, the most powerful woman who ever lived, and maybe she's still alive at some level. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy your weekend, and it's love, love, love. Thank you so much, Mr. Benny. Carl David Blake, we got to talk. I wish I could come to those morning coffees.